First question, talking toxic coaching. So, Joe, what is toxic coaching? What does a toxic coach look like?
Oh, lots of different things that can happen. One of the things that I guess we talk about what it's not, but one of the things that we talk about is no matter what, we've done shows on how to be a good assistant coach and talked about it quite a bit. We talk about it all the time in our chalk talks. No matter what, when you walk out of that office, when you walk out of that staff meeting, whatever decision was made, and you must understand that the decision is the decision of the head football coach and nobody else. Because, guys, assistant coaches, nobody cares about you. Like, this is the harsh reality. Your players, they know. Nobody else cares. Nobody else, your name doesn't go in the paper as my favorite mentor, Kevin Ferguson, rest in peace, told me, probably my first year, second year coaching, I guess, first year at Prince George, and it was picture day. And he said, I don't take assistant coach pictures, and you shouldn't either. So, okay. And he said, because the only time that it will get used is in the paper when you have been caught doing something and you're going to look like the shocked guy. It's not a good picture. Don't take it, because that's the only time it's ever going to get used. So nobody cares about you. So when you walk out of that office, it's whatever the head coach said we're going to do. And it's a unified front. And it can be very, very subtle. Or it can be very obvious. Or it can be obvious to no one, but just completely hidden. And it is going out. I mean, very simply, it can be going out and doing your own thing. Going out and telling the kids that you think whatever we're doing is stupid, but such and such wants to do it. So that makes it very obvious. It can be not giving your best, but that's usually not it. So it can be presented in that way, that schematically or on the field sabotage. It can be off the field sabotage where the kids aren't involved at all, where backstabbing the coach, backstabbing another coach behind that coach's back, especially with the community. That's the worst place that it happens. It could also be, with administration or something. But especially with the community, talking to parents or something. And it's hard. The smaller the town, the harder it is, because that assistant, like, not that Colonial Heights is a big town, but I don't know anybody in Colonial. I know a handful of people from Colonial Heights. Most of them don't live there anymore. Like, I don't know the community. I don't live there. I don't go there. I live 35 minutes away. I don't hang out there. Um, I know very few parents and stuff. So I don't ever talk to parents or talk to anybody in the community. And it was the same way when I was in Amelia. It was basically the same way when I was at Prince George. I've always lived at places. I've always lived in Richmond City, or very close by, and driven 45 minutes to go to work, 56 minutes to Amelia, or 57, or whatever it was. So it's very different. When you're in a small town and you hire assistants who went to school there and live there, you can get that toxic within the community kind of thing. And that's hard, because they may think they're just talking to their buddies, but it's like,
Right.
that's not how it works. This is a business that we're running. This is a business. It's a fun business, but it's a business, as far as in the office. And then there's the guy who just makes it about himself, just in general, and really puts on a show that way. It all manifests. Ultimately, all of those things get back to the kids, and that's the problem. Ultimately, whether it's community, whether it's infighting between coaches, whether it's, I'm going to do it my way, even though the coordinator or the head coach said do it this way, or the coordinator says, the same thing about the head coach, whatever. All of those things get back to the kids. They know about it, and they'll feel it. They'll recognize it eventually. or even if they don't recognize it, a lot of times the things they don't recognize are the things that are directly affecting them.
Right.
And they just, you'll have somebody who's a very charming person, that his position group or his kids or whatever are, on his side, not realizing that even though he's the cool guy, he's the one sabotaging everything. So it all comes down to not presenting a unified front and not keeping business in house.
Yeah, I tie a lot of this to the military because that's where I've seen the most leaders in my life, right? I mean, I'm almost 20 years there, and I've seen good and bad leaders all along the way. And it generally the toxic leaders are the ones that stand out the most for me because you learn something all the time, right? And then sometimes you learn how not to do things, and that's what you learn from toxic guys. In the military, we use a thing for leadership, and it's be no do. That's kind of the mantra. Being a leader is looking the part. So we have a physical standard, right? You got to look. And I know in coaching it's a little bit different. I still think coaches need to prioritize their health a little more. I know Andy Reid is a very large man and he's up there doing great things, but I would still love for him to be healthier.
Those are exceptions, though.
Yeah, and be around and
yeah.
So being what you're trying to get your kids to represent, I want you to be healthy. I have talked on here before how I do all the conditioning with the kids. And some of it's because I just need to keep myself up for the military, but a lot of it's because I'm trying to set that standard, right? You lead by example. So that's part of it is the no portion is knowing your job, right? If the kids can't come talk to you about whatever it is in your position group because you don't know and you constantly have to go ask the coordinator, you got to go ask the head coach, you got to go whatever it is, you've not spent the time to be the leader they need right now. And so knowing how to do the things and then do is just physically showing up doing it every day. Really, that's where the lead by example comes in, like with your physical, the way you carry yourself, right? Being always professional. That's what Kenny really said not too long ago on that episode of being a new coach is just professionalism always. If you ever slip up, right, if you're the guy that goes out to the honky tonk and kind of what you said, like that, you start bad mouthing people, that's not leading by example. So if you're not fitting that be no do principle, there's a pretty good chance you've slipped into toxicity. And being a toxic coach can show up in so many ways. Emotional intelligence is the first big one, I think. And that comes back into how are you handling yourself in town? How you handle yourself in the media, in whatever it is, in the school building, man. Unfortunately, I've dealt with like rumor mill at a school, and the teachers come and they're like, well, we all heard it from the same guy, and it's one of the coaches on staff, right? Like, holy crap, like what is going on? And you learn he's got a history of that. Not being able to handle change, right? That's an emotional intelligence thing. If I can't handle the change, that shows up as toxicity. Not being at fault for things, right? I talk a lot about extreme ownership, and that's, my wife tells me that maybe extreme ownership is too far. you can't be 100% responsible for everything because you're not the kid on the field playing ball. So at some point there's got to be some, but who does she know? She's just a doctor. So, but that extreme ownership.
I haven't got into extreme ownership, but Grant Cardone has a similar thing of like taking responsibility for everything. And that's more my speed. I think he's a total a-hole, but I'm not listening to him to be his friend. And he talks about, extreme ownership. My wife's a type 1 diabetic. And she's like, how am I supposed to, like, this is not my fault. That's where she draws the line.
Yeah. I mean, right. So, yeah, this or that. But the guy who's never at fault, ever. Right. If his linebackers for the third week in a row can't read, and he's the linebackers coach, and you go, Coach, we got to fix this. No, it's your defense. You're calling the wrong calls. Or
your defense or the kids.
You're not blitzing enough. The kids
somebody
just aren't
else
getting it. Right. Yes. It's always someone else's fault. And that can be on any level. It could be a coordinator. It could be a head coach for sure. We're seeing that in the college ranks right now a lot with, teams not performing the way they thought they would. I think toxicity shows up in like the coach that won't stop screaming. If you're constantly screaming, and Joe, you've said this many times, it's like because you don't know what else to do, right? You actually don't know how to coach that to fix it. So all you scream is, look confident, play more confident, or, more effort or be more aggressive. Like, give them something to
You're
fix.
generally doing one of two things. You're either you don't know what to say, or you think that no matter what you say, that kid's still the problem. Instead of and that kid may be the problem. Doesn't matter. That kid is the kid.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't that's where it doesn't matter. And so and kids get really frustrated when they don't get coached on what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Especially when it's just like, do it faster, go harder. It's like it's not I just did my best and
Yeah.
it didn't work.
I think one other one here, and we'll kind of move on and talk about how to deal with these coaches. But I think if you're afraid to let someone else come in and educate you on something, or afraid to let them come in and talk to your position group, or whatever it is, right? The inability to learn, to just go, I don't know. Remember the Titans. Everybody remembers when the DC's like, look, Herm, I'm getting my tail whipped tonight. I need your help, right? That is what we should all kind of be like. Like, this week I'm struggling, guys. I don't know how to help me stop this offense or help me game plan this front. We've seen a bunch of them like it, but they stunt in a weird way, and I'm not sure how to make it follow our rules. Whatever it is, you just got to be able to be on a team, and everyone can help problem solve. And if you get to that point where you just can't take the criticism or someone else's input, I cherish the coaches I'm around right now because I'm the new guy on staff, and they don't come asking me like, "How would you do this?" But when I say, "Hey, I'm seeing this," there's not one person been like, yeah, "We don't care, right? We're gonna do it all right." No, they're like, "You're right. I see that." Or, "Yeah, man, we saw that a few plays ago. You don't have a headset. We do. You don't know. We're trying to hit it at the right spot, right?" Or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
and then the unloyalty and the sabotaging, all that, you already talked about that. I don't want to hammer on that too much, but that is toxicity, right? It's the coach that sometimes they've even got a group of kids that have bought in, and they're like, my coach is never wrong.
Usually do. Usually, very often.
And those tend to be the cancers. Like, and in my experience, like the kids that follow them to the end of the earth are also the ones that are unable to change, don't take coaching.
Well, the most toxic of coaches will seek out, probably unconsciously, but that's their nature.
Yeah.
They will seek out the kids that they know are disgruntled, that are easily swayed, especially the ones that can play a little bit or have a little bit of sway with the other kids, and they will latch on there, and that's the in for total sabotage. And again, I think most of those guys think what they're doing. My experience is most of those guys aren't consciously sabotaging the program. They think that they know so much better what needs to be done. They think that their way is the only way it's going to work. They think that their way is that they are doing the program a favor by undermining somebody else, when the reality is they're killing the program. And it goes back to goes back to Coach Simple and that kind of stuff. Is like the X's and O's don't matter. It's the kid's confident. Well, if the kids are hearing this from one guy and this from another guy, they're not going to be confident.
No. Second question here is, why do we want to deal with those toxic coaches now? The season just ended, so why are we going to give them their walking papers now?
Well, you certainly don't want to go into the weight room in January or whenever you go into the weight room and have them there and then have to remove them. You don't, and this is the time period where furthest removed from the season, so that it has as little impact when the season starts. You want this to happen because it's gonna be a thing, right? Especially with a lot of the stuff we've talked about, influence over players, contacts in the community, all of those sorts of things. If it's just the guy who's out there on the field screaming and yelling, the kids are gonna like just clap and wave their keys at him, and it's cool. But that's probably, that's the easy one. and you want to get that done because you want your players to know that you see it. You don't want to wait around for an actual incident or another incident. And this is the opportunity. That said, it's hard, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, you want to the least impact that it will have on the following season. Because if you get started now and something happens in a 7-on-7 in May and you just can't take it anymore, like ugh, he's just made more contacts, more involvement, and it's going to be a harder deal to remove.
Yeah, I agree. It is that what you said, just not letting it impact next season. Don't let one loss become two losses, right? Because if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. I think it's also right now is when your memory's the freshest. So you have right now you can probably if you have this guy on your staff, there's probably 2 or 3 or 5 incidents that you can go, God, I wish I had somebody else there because that was terrible, or whatever the case is. But if you wait until after the off season, after spring ball, or maybe it shows up in spring ball again, but when you get him away from your everyday actions, right? Your everyday practices, you're going to forget about those little things, right? We kind of forget the bad and we remember the season, we remember some good plays. We don't really remember the missed blocks next season, right? You remember, man, we really fit power up really good that game, or whatever it is. Maybe you remember just games by scores.
And their behavior is not going to show up in the offseason because
right.
You're not most of that behavior is related to frustration and to feeling like we could do this better if I was in charge, or if they did what I said. And in the off season, that's not there. And again, I don't think that we're not talking about like bad guys, evil guys generally. They're legitimately thinking that they're doing this for someone else, when the reality is a lot of times their ego is just so big that it's, that's the problem.
So yeah, you're not going to remember all that by next season, and you'll probably just give them another chance, and then you'll relive it all again. So you might as well cut the cancer now. Another thing is, like you said, Joe, they're not always evil guys, and so giving them a fair shot now to start shopping jobs, to start putting themselves out there, I think that's like the adult thing to do. I know some schools, like when coaches get laid off, they want to wait until the last minute. Like, let's wait until May to let them go because we want to be the nice guy, because we don't want that person upset in the classroom for 2 months, right? So we're going to make it the easiest on ourselves. But now coaching jobs are filled. Like, they're going to catch
coaching jobs, everything's going.
Yeah, they're the good ones especially are going to be filled because people have been vying to get in. They're trying to get there. So giving them a fair shot to move on. Just because
I think most schools, well, at least most schools that are here, they have to renew your contract in January, early February, if teaching wise.
Right.
And I believe we do the same as far as stipends.
Gotcha. So just let them move on and find that next job and find somewhere they fit. Right. Look, I've been pushed out of coaching offices, and maybe I was the toxic guy there. And like you said, you don't always know it. There was a guy I perceived as a toxic guy, and we just didn't mesh, whatever it is. But give them that chance to go find their next home is the adult thing to do. And the last one, and you already alluded to this one, but the kids know. The kids know who the toxic coach is. What any of the Beano do that they don't fit, right? If it's the guy that's always late, always leaves early, always has something else to do, or if it's the screaming and yelling guy, if it's this guy who just doesn't know the position to coach it, whatever. It's the coach that's out drinking all hours of the night, or we've dealt with like coaches that are sending messages inappropriately late at night and all that, right? And I mean, it gets into that, and that guy still didn't know he was the bad guy. He wasn't sending bad messages. He was just sending messages at 1:00 in the morning to kids he doesn't need to be talking to, right? So they know, the community probably knows. So if you can cut it out now, that might be the buy-in your kid's been waiting for, right? It's kind of that, nah, this guy's just going to sweep it under the rug. When reality is like, oh no, this guy's going to finally stand up and make a change in the program, in the community. So I think that's enough reasons for me to go ahead and make the move. I'm sure there's more out there, and Joe, you may know some more of them, but the buy-in and being the bigger adult, letting them go on and do their thing, those are pretty big for me to go ahead and make that cut.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things, and you mentioned, the adult thing to do, and I think it's important to back up and make sure we do the adult thing. which adults aren't always good at. Make sure that we have that conversation. I would not fire somebody just because we've never spoken about it, but they're being toxic. This conversation should have happened multiple times by now. And the conversation, essentially, it comes down to this. Hopefully, you've had this conversation. If you haven't, you need to have this conversation of what's going on. This is what I always think you need to be careful with your language. This is what I perceive. This is what I've been told. You try not to be super accusatory, but like, let's talk it out because it needs to be fixed. We're not trying to do a fist fight. That's not the adult thing to do. The adult thing is, let's talk about this. Let's get it all out in the open. If we need to have somebody else there, if the athletic director or principal or whoever needs to be there when we talk about it, other coaches on staff, if you want to have it that way, that's probably not the first thing you do. But you have that adult conversation. And what you look for is, if you had that adult conversation and everything was great in that conversation and then nothing changed, that's a red flag. If you had that adult conversation and they were combative, that wasn't me. No, you're wrong. No.
Thanks
Again,
for
you
proving
go,
my point.
exactly. That's a red flag. Those are the things where we've had this conversation and you have stated that you are not going to change, or you have said you were going to change and then did not change. And then we had that conversation again and said, hey, nothing's changed. And you said, oh, it won't happen again. And then it did. You got to go. I would say, unless those things have happened, there's nothing to be done yet. If you're at this point in the year and none of those things have happened and you're the head coach, that's on you for not wanting to have adult conversations. But something has to happen. And you have to have had that adult conversation first.
Yep. You actually jumped right into the next points on how do we break that news to a coach that he's being let go. And that's my very first point too. In the military, we have quarterly counselings, and it's just a, where are you on my expectation scale? And it's not always bad. Sometimes you walk in and it's like, here's the 10 things you're doing amazing. Wear your hat straighter or something, right? Like, there's very few bads and mostly sustains. And that's good. And I know coaching is a little bit different, right? We're so busy in the meat of the season that sometimes it's hard to sit back and do that, because the weekend you break down film, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you've got practice, Thursday's walkthrough, Friday's game when we start over. Where do I have that coach the coaches moment? Even with free time.
You're very afraid to have tough conversations when you got a rhythm going, or when things are falling apart. Like, you don't
Right.
throw gasoline on the fire.
Yep. But yes, what you talked about, those talks that need to happen along the way. I'm not saying you need to sit down and do an every other game counseling for your coaches, but you've got to bring that dude in and that one-on-one talk of like, look, man, you lost your cool out there today. I saw it. I know the kids saw it. Let's talk about what happened and where can we go forward, right? Like, trying to remember the exact way we say it, but essentially, what's the problem, what's the impact, and what's the way forward, right? And so if you can kind of follow that method, and it doesn't matter what issue it is. It could be being late to work. It could be you didn't get the camera set up on Friday night. The headsets weren't set up. Whatever it is, it had an impact, and here's how we're going to fix it. So should be having those, just like Joe mentioned earlier. And don't wait until the end of the season to do that. Just because you're in a rhythm, think of how much better of a rhythm you could be in. Think how much better your performance could be if you are just letting them know, like, I'm a big on communication, and like to the point that like I want to write a book or a podcast or something on just communication, because man, coaches are so bad at it. I don't understand how coaches can be so bad about just talking about how good or bad we are at things. It's so wild. Expectations and left and right limits, and we're not very good at it. So having those conversations is great. Be honest with that person, the coach, as you're in that final meeting, which should not be the first, but you just got to be super honest and have those examples ready right now, whatever it was, because you can't go in and try to like think about things that happened 7 or 8 weeks ago, right? You maybe should be taken down. Like, I don't tell you to journal. I don't know how you all feel about journaling. I know that coaches are very alpha male type, and maybe journaling's too beta male. I don't know, but
No, you should be documenting everything, just like in teaching. Kids, coaches, you should be documenting everything. You should have some place in your office, if you're the head coach, to document absolutely every incident that happens with a kid. Every incident that happens just becomes the thing that you do when you walk back into the office after practice. Most of us are the last one. When you're the head coach, you're the last one to leave. Like, just pull that little book out and little notebook out and document anything that happened that day. Make it a part of your day. It's because there will be situations where you're going to be questioned, unless you've got total power. Then you are going to be questioned at some point. And if you can pull out that documentation, it's going to go a lot better and a lot more in your favor.
yeah. And then just like Joe said, you want to do those first meetings in private. They say praise in public and discipline in private or whatever, right? So do that stuff in private. The meeting where you're letting them go, I highly recommend administration's involved, right? Joe, you talked about having another coach there. I don't even know if I'm doing that. I'm probably just going to have the
Probably
athletic
not.
director
No,
come
not in that
in
situation. No, that's
and
a private.
yeah, and just let them know. And it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't even have to be a conversation. Like, you can ask for questions, whatever, but it just, I think about the movie Moneyball a lot, right? With I think it was Brad Pitt, and just how he said it, like, they're professionals. Just walk in, tell them the facts, and leave. Like, it doesn't have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be this big emotional thing. Look, coach, man, it ain't working out. Here's the reasons why. And the facts are the facts. So, having been someone that's been let go somewhere just a couple of years ago, right? Like, I know that I appreciated that meeting being so professional later. I was upset that I didn't get to speak my piece, but they got a business to run. And
there's nothing to be said.
If I was right or wrong, it doesn't matter. I
not
wasn't going to change their mind. So, yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you would add to how to break that news to them?
Well, I would go back another step, because I'm sure there's a lot of coaches that are listening and are thinking this. It's not always the head coach's option. That's one of the things that we have to be aware of, especially the smaller the school, or the smaller the community. You've got somebody who's entrenched there. You've got somebody who came with the territory, and you know what I mean. They were a coach there. They've been a coach there for 30 years, and they just don't like the new way or the new guy or whatever, and it's not working out. But they've been there longer than you. They've got supporters in the school board. They've got supporters in the front office. They've got supporters here and there. They've got supporters with the kids. It's not always our option. But that's when you have to have the tough conversations with admin. You have to come in with admin, and so that's where you need to be creative. You need to be careful, because you may go to you may end up on the wrong side of admin now, which means that you're in the wrong spot, by the way. But you're there.
Right.
But that's where you might go in and say, look, we need to set up a plan, set up a, document everything, and set up a deal where, look, next time this happens, I get I need to be able to do something about it. You also have the added issue at the high school level of, they are a contracted teacher there. You don't get the option to fire them as a teacher. That's not in your job description at all. So you're talking about, very likely, especially if it's somebody who's been around for a while, or somebody who might not be, might know that they're not going to get a job somewhere else teaching, or might not want to get a job somewhere else teaching, or coaching, or whatever it is. You have the added issue of the fact that you may be talking about firing somebody who is going to be working there next year, or the administration may be looking at it as, look, you fire this guy because you think he's a bad football coach. This is why you have to make your argument and document everything and show that this person is not just not a good football coach. This person is detrimental to the success of these players and this team. Can't just be like, we don't get along.
Right.
It's got to be more than that, because they're looking at it like, if we don't let this guy coach football next year, we got to go find a biology teacher. You know how long it takes to find a biology teacher? It's freaking impossible. Like, I got a math certificate. I mean, you know this. Because it was the same thing. I got a math certificate. What I found out as soon as I got certified to teach math was I could walk into any building in the state of Virginia and say, "Where's my classroom?"
Right.
Because if you want to get rid of somebody, he better teach PE
or health.
or history, something. Because if he's math or science, we got problems. I can't. It's gonna be hard to let that guy go. Because the school does not want that guy to leave, especially if he's good at it. Now, if he's terrible at it, maybe they'll be okay. So then you have to look at alternatives. I was at a job, and a person who had been a very good football coach, but who had turned his focus to another sport and had now become kind of the August to November coach and wasn't putting the time in at the program, but didn't want to lose that stipend, right? That you're talking about, and wasn't going to leave because, again, entrenched in another sport, had been at the school forever, wasn't leaving. The other sport was the priority. Wasn't going to leave over football, but it was going to be a fight. And the situation there was, I have a talent for stabbing coaches in the back. That's one of my superpowers. And I started at it very early. If I want your job, I will eventually get it. And I'm proud of that. I've stopped doing it because I don't want anybody's job now.
You are bald. It made sense that you needed a superpower.
Yeah, well, I had hair at the time. This was very early in my career. And essentially what happened was I was doing what so many young coaches do. I'm putting in 80 hours a week. I'm obsessed with football. I'll do anything you need. I'm there, first one there, last one to leave. I'm studying. I'm going to the clinics. I'm doing everything before the business. And essentially what happened was they moved that coach down a level and moved me up into that place, into that. So, it was that conversation that basically went, "Hey, I know you only can work." It was again, this was not a toxic coach. This was actually somebody that at the time, I don't talk to him forever, but I would have considered a friend. We had a little iffiness for a little bit, but by the time a few years later, there wasn't any issue. It was just the way that it was. It was, he was on his way out and I was on my way in. And but the conversation was, again, I know that you are focused on this other sport. Now, the what we would call toxic was the fact that it wasn't focused on football, and it was letting the kids down, and that's toxic for the football team. Hey, I know you can only work August to November because you're so into this other thing, and I get that. So why don't you coach the freshman team? And that'll be great because you got so much experience, and the freshmen don't need to install their offense in March. We're cool there, and they won't remember it anyway. We don't have spring ball, by the way. So that was the discussion and the agreement, and it was done that way. So there are times when you have to get creative. We've had to get creative by saying, "Hey, you've been on the varsity staff. Your son is coming up to varsity this year, and we don't think it's good to be coaching on the same level." We talked about this in the parent podcast. So that was a way to move them down. And what happens when you move somebody down, if they are truly toxic, ego, or just disinterested, or not interested in, in the case of that, the first coach, it was basically like, my interests have moved to another sport. My focus has moved to another sport. In the case of that parent, and I can think of one specific, very quickly apparent, my interest was not in this program. My main interest lies in my kid. Now, this wouldn't be a coach who's been there 20 years. This was like a parent volunteer kind of thing.
Right.
So you can get creative. You can move responsibilities, and you will find that if somebody's ego is really in the way and you subtly or not remove responsibilities from them, they will often just go away. But then there's the other side of it, which is they may go up to 11 with their toxicity. Oh, he doesn't even know. Yeah, I could do so many things for this program, and now I'm not even the coordinator anymore. I'm not even on the varsity staff anymore. That can go one of two ways as well, which is why you have to document, you have to have admin involved in this, is because they may turn it up so much that now you can make the big move.
Right.
So there's a lot to think about. I mean, it's not an easy thing, and it's not, we're not the CEO. We can be like, oh, the head coach, he's the CEO. Yeah, the CEO doesn't have to answer to the principal and the athletic director and the school board. The CEO, doesn't have, the CEO can fire anybody he wants. We can't do that. We're not the CEO. We're the CEO within our own little house, except for we can't fire anybody without, most of us. Some get to that level of control, but most coaches don't have that because there's so much else involved. Maybe, can you not renew the contract of a volunteer? Sure. Can you not renew the contract of a lay coach? Probably, as long as they're not, heavily knit in the community or something, or a parent, which can make it a mess as well. But if they're a teacher or they've been there 30 years, it's hard. It can be real, real hard, and you might have to get creative.
Kind of going back on earlier, we were talking about what they look like and what they aren't. And I don't think a toxic coach is a guy that just has a good argument with you every once in a while, right? Like,
No,
our schemes clash, man. And the odds of you, look, Joe, you picked me up as a rookie. I'd never podcasted. I had 1 year of coaching experience, and you taught me the ropes. And there was no argument because I didn't know what the heck I was doing anyway, right? So I was never going to argue about anything JDFB or the podcast or whatever.
that worked out really well for me.
It did work out really well.
I didn't want to.
The odds of you picking up a rookie who's willing to put in the time to become a great coach are not great. And the odds of you picking up a dude that has been to 5 or 6 or 10 other schools is very, very high. So he's been a part of many other schemes that were probably successful. And if not, change is hard. And so he just believes it was successful. So he doesn't have to learn anything else. It could be something as stupid as, like, the ASCA principles. Like, no, we don't run 30 backers. We always have them in 50s so that they can, whatever, I don't know, insert craziness
Cool
here,
things,
right?
yeah.
Right, reads, linebacker reads. How many Google linebacker reads? And then go to YouTube and look at all the videos of people teaching all the different ways that people run linebacker reads. So he could very easily come in the office and have an argument with you about linebacker reads, and that's absolutely okay. Being ridiculously blitz heavy versus playing base. He could be on either end of that spectrum, and you might be on the other, and it's okay to have those arguments. I think that helps all of us develop. Obviously, they can get beyond professional, and, if they ever come to fisticuffs, was probably a real big issue, but coming in and just having chalkboard wars sometimes and arguing over scheme is absolutely okay. Someone being upset at the way you handled a situation with the kids is absolutely okay. Once again, it can be slightly an argument and a conversation to be had. And you may just have to say, at the end of the day, it's my prerogative, and this is how we're going to handle it. And, that's just what it is. That's the head coach's job.
Hopefully you are on a staff. If you're not the head coach, you're on a staff where the head coach will handle those things.
Right.
And that's, again, being in the right place. Are you and the head coach in sync with the way that you think that things should be done? In a general, do you think that, how do you view teaching the game and coaching the game? Do you think that we should, brutalize the kids and scream and yell at them, or do you think that we should? Everybody's gonna scream and yell, by the way. It's not like it's not like there's never it's a physical game, it's an aggressive game, it's an alpha male game. Like there's gonna be high tension, there's gonna be arguments. All of those things are gonna happen, which is exactly what you're saying. Yep. It's not the guy that you have an argument with. It's the guy who is hurting the football team. It's not the guy who the other coaches don't like.
They cannot like.
I'm not likable.
Right.
I am not likable as a coach. Like, as a person, I think I'm okay. as a coach, like I am not likable, but you know, I'm not. I maybe I'm toxic. I don't know.
I think we all have a
Generally,
little toxicity. We all have it.
oh sure,
It's
but
just
generally when we leave that office, whatever the decision was, let's go. Like,
right.
let's go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to turn and yell at you know another coach on the sideline. I've never been there. I've a lot of times I've been in the box, which is uh anytime that we've had a chaotic staff, I've always been like, I'll go up top if that's cool with everybody. And I just sit up there and you just hang out peaceful. And down a headset, it's like it's like they're in Hamburger Hill down on the headset and just like horrible, horrible screaming coming from the sidelines. But from up top, it just looks like, whatever.
It's just football, right?
But I mean, I've been on sideline. Now, I'll say that most of these ended in the person going quickly. I've been on sidelines where a lot of times on the game day sidelines, it's people who just are so competitive, I guess. It's beyond that. I'm competitive somewhat, but people who just lose their minds in a competitive situation. Like the kids we talked about at the beginning. Like when kids just cannot handle adversity. There are adults who just cannot handle adversity. Yep. And will get into fights with the other coaches on the sidelines because things aren't going our way. And I've seen punches thrown. We've seen it in the NFL. And it happens in the NFL. Like those guys are the ultimate professionals, most of them. But it happens in the NFL. I forget who it was, but there was some might have been Jalen Herz and what's his name? Big receiver. Anyway, everybody knows
Devontae Smith?
Not Devontae Smith, the other one. Anyway, I think that they got into like an argument on the sidelines or something like that, and like, pretty intense argument. And of course, the reporters, can't wait to talk about that. That's the best. ESPN's just worthless. And so like that's the whole topic. And I think it was Jalen Hurts. I could be wrong, but I think it was Jalen Hurts who's like, if y'all think that's a big deal, you just haven't been paying attention. That's every week. And it's like that stuff, we're cool. We walk away, we come off the field. Hey man, I'm cool. We go back out there, we get in the huddle. Like that dude, whatever his name is, and I can't think of him. And we go back out on the field, and I'm gonna have to look at the Eagles roster in a second here.
AJ Brown. It's got to be AJ Brown. That's the other one.
That sounds right. Yeah.
His name.
Uh,
Listen, please don't hate me if that name's wrong. I do not watch the NFL.
No, it could have been AJ Brown. I'm trying to think. I think it was, but
I'm a high school coach and a college fanatic.
Yeah, like I get people who are like, "What do you think about this in the NFL?" I'm like, "I don't care."
It doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's AJ Brown. I'm just looking at it. So anyway, the whole thing was like, that's cool because we're gonna go with Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown, even though I'm totally pulling this story out of my tail. They could be in a fisticuffs. I can promise you, they're professionals. When they get in the huddle, now Antonio Brown, not a professional.
Different story.
That was kind of held on for a while, right? But then it fell apart. But AJ Brown's not going to drop a football just to spite Jalen Hurts, right? They're professionals. Terrell Owens wasn't necessarily professional off the field all the time, but on the field, competitor, right? Those guys are professionals. That's not what we're talking about. Those arguments and disagreements and things, as intense as they may be, again, this is an alpha male profession. There are not a lot of dudes who are going to tuck tail and just be quiet.
Right.
Now we may be mature enough to wait until the door closes and not do it in front of the kids, and we should be. That's one of the important things that we should do, is not make it in front of the kids. But there's going to be some adult conversations. They don't need to get physical, but they should be. There's times we're not going to get along, and that's okay. That's not toxic coaching. Toxic coaching, again, is sabotage, intentionally or not intentionally, sabotaging the ability of the kids to play the game.
Yep.
That's where it's a problem. If it doesn't affect the kids, screw them. Two coaches cannot get along. I don't care. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator don't get along. I don't care. Do they walk out of the office and coach the things we said to coach? Great. Let's go.
Yep. Sweet, man. I think we checked all the boxes for toxicity. Pay the bills and get out of here.
Let's do it.
Join.joedanielfootball.com. Go there today. For the price of your email and $1 bill, you can get access. 7 days. No paywall within there. You just got whatever you want to do. If you can learn the 4-3 in 7 days, congratulations. You're not going to be able to coach it very well, but you can act like you can, I guess. 4 defensive packages, 4-3, 4-2-5, the 3-3 stack, and the 3-4. Pistol Power offense is in there. Big offensive year for me, just learning a new system and seeing a whole bunch of watching the wing T creep into the NFL this year was pretty wild. And you can do all of that in the Pistol Power offense. You can run whatever your base is now. You can add whatever package you want, RPOs, multiple 50 formations a game if you want.
I wouldn't.
Talked to an OC the other day, and he said his goal was like 22 formations a game. And they run 3 plays. And
I mean,
like, that's gorgeous. But you can do that in the Pistol Power offense if that's what you want to do. You can run whatever.
I've done something like that before, and it was the kids that we had. They weren't great football players, but they were smart. And so we ran. Now you're talking about a very different situation, but we had smart kids who kind of understood football, but they weren't really good players. And so it was, we have to execute play 1 and play 2 to perfection. And then we have to figure out how to get you not playing it well. And so it was motion, shift, unbalanced, flip, everything. I mean, probably in the high teens or 20.
Yeah.
I can see that. Especially if you give me credit for right and left.
There you go.
Yeah.
Chalkboard forum is open all the time. Come and ask your question. You can do it if you're a night shift worker in the off season and you want to just come on and ask questions. Someone will get back to you, and Joe will eventually get back to your question. Chalk Talks. Right now, they're weekly. December is coming up. We will be off for the month of December. No Chalk Talks. January will come back, and they'll be bi-weekly until the season kicks off.
We're off until we're basically off with the Chalk Talks until January.
We're done with Chalk Talks until January. So there you go. So when we come back in January, they'll be bi-weekly. So jump in, ask your questions. Sometimes they're themed. Sometimes they're Q&A. Jump in, get in where you fit in. And then game film analysis, which is the greatest of all weapons when you can just send off your film and let someone who has no connectivity to any player, any scheme, anything on your team, they don't care who the booster club's kids are or the board's kids are, they don't care. They're going to tell you the low-hanging fruit, how to get better today. You go and you coach these 3, 4, 5, 10 things, you're going to be a better football team when you walk on the field Friday. If you coach it and rep it. Yep. It's beautiful. So game film analysis, jump in the platinum level to get that, and you'll thank yourself next season.